Hey friend, it's dark half the time on this planet, so unless you got shiny eyes like Riddick, you're gonna have a hard time operating operationally unless you get night vision from TNVC.com.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gonzalez, president of Trident Concepts, and I'm here today with the always lovely Paul from AR15.com. And we've got part two of our TNVC NightFighter debrief that we're going to talk to you about. So if you didn't check out the first one, it was a really good one. Talked about the hunter-hunted evolutions that we did, which were a lot of fun. It was also your first exposure to night vision, no pun intended there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about equipment. Paul, ask me what this stick is for.
I hope not to beat me with. What is it for?
We have ways of making you talk. Anyhow, so equipment for night vision.
Yeah.
People, if you're getting into this activity, are going to learn very quickly that it is costly.
If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, indeed it is.
Well, brings me up to a point that I want to share with folks is like, hey, listen, I hope you do embrace that. I hope you go out there and invest in some quality night vision equipment. But one of the things that I would recommend is that first, try to define what it is that you need to do, not want to do. What do you need to do? Like maybe you need to go ahead and work the fields at night for some vermin. Great, awesome. What do you actually need to make that happen? Because what you're going to find very quickly is you can go down a rabbit hole, and the deeper you go, the more expensive it is. So take some time to really identify what it is that you need, because I will promise you our friends at TNVC will have everything and anything that you could possibly ever want.
Indeed they do.
Yeah, so now what we're going to do is we're going to break equipment down into kind of like two bundles, two pots, if you will. The first pot is going to be our helmets, what we wore on our heads. The second is going to be our rifles, what we had on our rifles. So let's start with the rifle. And really what we're talking about, folks, is we're talking about lasers.
And that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
Talking about lasers and how cool lasers are, because I mean, let's be honest, lasers are cool.
That was, yeah, definitely.
So in the realm of night vision, you have basically, when we're talking about fighting at night, you have really two ways that you can fight at night. You can fight a passive means, which we did, and then we can fight in the active means, which we did. So what does that mean? Active means that I'm projecting some sort of illuminator or pointer that allows me to aim without the...
Is that like my aura of excellence?
No, it's not at all like that. No, not even close.
Okay.
Where's that stick? Anyhow, so active means that I'm actually projecting out some sort of IR signature, and in this case, it's going to be in the form of a dot, a pointer, if you will. Okay, and the other is, and I can also work that both IR and visible. So we learned that there are times when I want to have visible, and there are times when I want to be in the IR spectrum. And so what we learned again in the IR spectrum. What we learned about that is that to be able to do that, it's costly, because those pieces of equipment definitely start to get a little bit more pricier to have the dual role of some sorts. And then the other thing that we also learned is that I may not be able to see well enough with my night vision equipment, so some of these lasers are also equipped with a IR illuminator. So we had a pointer and we also have an illuminator. And again, price point starts to rise when we get into those types of discussions. But what I think is kind of cool is that you can get into the night vision realm on the lower end pretty easily. You know, that stuff is available. Because for the longest time, folks, I don't think people really get this. I don't think people appreciate this, but lasers are regulated by the FDA. And they have what they call eye-safe and non-eye-safe. So the military uses non-eye-safe because I can fire that laser off and it'll go a mile. And to get it to go a mile, it's super powerful. Obviously, in the commercial side of the house, we don't necessarily need to do that, nor do we want to do that, right? So because that IR pointer that's going so far is powerful enough to blind you very quickly, very quickly. So it's not eye safe, in other words. Now there's a lot more commercial units that are eye safe. The FDA's deemed them eye safe, which means they've put them down at a low power setting that is more than applicable for defensive uses that you might find, or any type of other practical use that you would use. So, you know, that's another good thing, is that we're seeing more and more technology being available to the layman. to the average
and
person.
I think there was a lot of people in that class when we started going one by one, depending on what unit they had. Like everyone was able to basically shine that light close to 100 yards, and like they worked. You know, like few were a lot more powerful.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is more the IR illuminator rather than the laser, but still, right? Like there's only so far you're going to see that laser.
For sure, because at some point you start to lose the ability to see. Your vision starts to lose that ability to see. So we had our lasers equipped with both visible and infrared lasers. We had some that had IR illuminators on them that allowed us to see whatever our dot was pointing at, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we also saw different ways of activating that, whether it be the IR, the pointer, or the illuminator, the pointer, or both at the same time. And folks, this is where, again, technology is really kind of coming into its own. Back when we were teaching this, we didn't have the interface, the ability to interface various modules on our rail system that allowed me to more efficiently or ergonomically activate or function all the tools that I had on that damn thing. So that was a huge plus. We're seeing a lot of companies that are stepping up and adding to the marketplace some really cool, I don't want to call them tchotchkes, but some cool devices that allow us to just work those things a little bit more efficient. Not that you can't do it the old way, but this just makes it a little bit easier. And I think for somebody that's on the newer end of the spectrum, ease of use is a big thing.
Definitely. I had to make some adjustments from day one to day two.
Absolutely.
I wasn't placing things in the right place, and then I thought it was okay, but as soon as I started running drills, okay, I need to change this up for tomorrow. I think you have to train to, sometimes because, folks go and they're used to shooting on their own range and their one specific application.
Right.
So, I mean, when you're shooting hog hunting, okay, and then you try to go do the night hunter versus hunted, your mindset's totally different, right?
It's so true.
When you go to these classes, you start to realize where all your failure points are.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, really super important.
So one of the things too about the equipment on the guns that we learned was it wasn't just about our lasers, but also our red dots. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is passive engagement. And what passive engagement means is that I'm not projecting any type of IR signature. What's happening is that I'm actually looking through my red dot sight and using the red dot to actually shoot with. And I love doing that. I've been doing that for a long, long time. And I don't think people really appreciate that. But that's one easy way to get into the night vision realm is instead of having to purchase that laser.
You don't have to buy all the pieces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just have to work my primary optic and I can work on the helmet mounted stuff, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So passive shooting is an easy way to get into the night vision game without having to load out for the active type of shooting, which I don't think people really appreciate. But so, that also, we also saw a lot of things that I was looking at the firing line and looking at people's gear, and I'm like, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. And again, you don't know what you don't know, right? And it's not my place to sit there and tell people that. It's more important that they experience that on their own.
Well, then they have that aha moment and they get it, right?
Absolutely. But we were running some pretty small optics that allowed us to conserve weight, because when you start to add all that crap on there, it adds weight very quickly. And the problem is that we're putting that weight on the bitter end of this rifle, which is making it harder to shoot and harder to drive. So we got to make sure that we're kind of thinking about all the equipment that we're adding to our weapon systems and that it makes sense. Some people also were running a weapon mounted white light, right? And so that's another integral part to this all. It doesn't make sense that you would want to go white light in a night fighting scenario. You would think that's kind of like, why would I ever want to go to a white light? But there are several instances and several times that you might want to go to that white light.
You had a few times
I
where
did.
you had to go to white light.
So I got the wonky device that was like finicky. One night it worked fine, the next night, and then it started not working, and we were trying to play with it, programming and all this other crap, but what I ended up having to do is transition to my white light and just go passive with my white light. And again, it works. It's a usable thing. So I can search under nods and be in the dark there. And then as soon as it's time to go hot, I can just splash that white light, go right up to my red dot, and bada bing, bada bang. So I really appreciated that. It was unfortunate that I had to do that, but it also proved valuable as far as concepts here that not everything is going to work as advertised. You might have to have a backup system. So, Now, there's also some pros and cons to having a weapon-mounted light that has both infrared and white, but again, that comes with a price tag to have that system, kind of like dual system of IR and white light. So you got to marry up what's important and what really works. You know, for me, I was happy just having that white light. What I did notice was that white light might be great for that defensive setting where I'm indoors and having to work indoors, but when I went outdoors and had a splash light at extended distances, it was washing out pretty, you know, like I was seeing the limitations of how far out I can push that. So that was also valuable. I kind of knew that, but it was good to see that. All right, so we had the lasers, we had the red dots, we had the weapon-mounted lights. Some other things that we saw were suppressors. And the importance behind suppressor is if you're fighting at night, one of the most important things that you're trying to do is reduce your signature. Really bright flash coming out of the end of your muzzle does not reduce your signature. So when people talk about suppressors, a lot of times they get they're under a false, they're misunderstanding why we use suppressors. We're using suppressors not because we're trying to reduce the, you know, or trying to increase the ear safe conditions, but we're really trying to reduce that flash signature that is associated with shooting these rifles.
It happens to be an added benefit.
It happens to have an added benefit of making it ear safe. So, you know, we saw probably about maybe half the class, more than half the class run with some sort of suppressor on there. And that's an important thing if you're going to be working.
I borrowed your Warden because I wasn't a cool kid. I'm not a cool kid.
But it was nice because that projected that flame down range as opposed to out, whiting out your imagery. So that would have been the con, is that it would have whited out your imagery a little bit, which we clearly don't want.
Which actually is one of the funny things when we did, you know, run a few drills, there was so much smoke.
Yeah.
That your white light became kind of useless too.
It did,
you know,
too.
There's things I didn't think about.
Absolutely, yeah. But a lot of that smoke was coming from the suppressors and the oil that we were shooting. Things were just getting super hot, and that oil was creating that smoke signature. So for sure,
it's just fun to kind of, like I said, when you're going through that, you start to see different failure points, and because you're putting yourself in different situations. You're not in control. Someone's telling you to do it.
Yep.
Have at it. Rock and roll.
So true.
See what works.
So, aside from that, about the only other thing, or so far what we've covered, about the only other thing that I would talk about is a lesson that we see repeated over and over and over again in our rifles, which is the proper use of a good 2-point sling. I think a lot of people either don't appreciate the value of a good 2-point sling, and particularly how to properly set it up for working, because when you've got all this accoutrements, all this stuff hanging off of you, you know, it becomes very important that the rifle is managed well, and the sling was bothering a lot of people.
And that sensory deprivation, like all of a sudden, if you're not used to knowing what you're caught on, like I got caught. And I was
you did.
Sitting there.
I was like, I was watching that, and I'm like, Paul.
He says this a lot.
It's true. So, you know, I think that probably covers it. There's a lot of little, maybe nitnoid things about the rifles themselves. We covered the big things. We covered the laser with the IR pointer, IR illuminator. We talked about the red dot. We talked about the white light. We talked about the suppressor. We talked about the slings. So let's go ahead and start talking about what we were wearing on our heads. And, you know, that means that you're either going to have like a non-ballistic helmet, a ballistic helmet, or some sort of skull cap. And we didn't see anybody wearing a skull cap.
Nope.
And which was too bad, because I think what you find with a skull cap is they're super lightweight, but they do not distribute the weight of the whatever accessories you're running very well. They get old very fast. I had plenty of time under those things, and we call them skull crushers for a reason. So we had non-ballistic and ballistic helmets, and the biggest difference is that if you really don't have a need for a ballistic helmet, I wouldn't recommend it. We got lucky because we were using gear that they provided for us, and they provided us non-ballistic helmets, which are basically just like souped up ProTech helmets. And that reduces the weight significantly. Let me tell you, you didn't get to appreciate that because that's all you've ever known.
That's all I've ever known.
That's all you've ever known. But not having to run a ballistic helmet, and just like it does wonders for your neck muscles. It's amazing. And
it really is amazing. Like especially before we balanced it out.
Oh yeah.
That I have 3 bulge discs in my neck.
I know. I was a little worried about this.
It was very quickly. It's just the PVS 31's not mounted to the front. I was like, if this is going to be how it is for 2 days, I'm going to have a problem. But as soon as we balanced it out, it made all the difference.
So that was a big thing that we discovered early on. Well, I shouldn't say early on, but we discovered that a while back, is that as soon as we were able, and it seems counterintuitive because you're adding weight.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't seem like it would
I was
work.
like, this is baloney.
Right, but
it's not going to work.
I'm handing you this weighted object, and I'm telling you to put it on your helmet. And you're like, why? My head hurts. My neck hurts. Why are you asking me to do this? Well, because that balance that we're creating on the back of the helmet is helping you to, create the balance. And so you don't feel that head
that
tilting,
strain isn't
that
there, right?
listing to the front of sorts, your bow going into the water. So that's an important thing. Now, after we talked about the helmet, the next piece of equipment that we had was the shroud on the helmet. The shroud on the helmet is what allows the mount to interface with the helmet. And everybody was pretty much running the same thing, so we didn't have anything unique there. But the mounts, what was really nice about the mounts was the mounts flip up out of sight very easily. And they allow us to either go administrative with the white light and get those things out of our face, or when we need a little break, they allow us to kind of get them up and out of our way. So I don't think people really appreciate the importance behind those types of devices, the mount and the actual plate, the cover there. But then once we added the night vision device, whatever it was, now you've got all these moving parts going on. You've got the tilt, you've got the focal distance, you've got the actual spacing for the tubes, you've got the flip up condition. I mean, in one little small piece of metal, there's like 5 adjustment points on it, and you have to figure out how to work all of those in a sensory deprived environment. So right there, that's like one of the most important things that you take away is how to work the helmet with all those adjustment points, and how important it is to pre-check your gear and make sure that it's all configured in the best way possible, because once you're out in the field, it is unlikely that you're going to be able to really fine-tune it. You might be able to tweak it, but you're not going to be able to fine-tune it like you can, in some comfortable setting, if you will.
Exactly.
So the helmets were nice. All the night vision equipment that we had that I saw in class was all battery on board conditions. There are some units that actually have the external battery packs that allow those things to run a lot longer. So I was pretty impressed that everybody had a battery on board setting. And aside from that, we saw a litany of different types of night vision devices. So we can begin to cover all of them.
You get to go to the class and then you kind of
pick and choose.
Talk to the guys. What are you using? How do you like that? That's when it comes to spending that kind
absolutely,
it's great to get feedback.
It's nice to kind of get some, and also see it in action. See it in action, like, ooh, I don't want that, or man, that looks like that makes a difference. That looks like that makes a big difference. So a lot of fun stuff with regards to equipment. I thought that, man, it was fun to get back in there. I'll be honest, some things have changed, some things haven't, as far as equipment is concerned. And I was really impressed to see what has changed, and I was not surprised to see what didn't. I really wasn't. So good stuff. So if you got feedback that you want to provide on your equipment, you want to show off your equipment, please post it down below. We'd love to hear your feedback, what sort of experiences that you've had. We're going to be doing one more video that's talking about the training itself, so stay tuned for that. Until then, I'm Jeff, and
take care and stay safe.
That was terrible. That was terrible.